which macromolecule does these items belong to? So your beans, your meats, your eggs. I know you know this one. Proteins, right? So outside of knowing that meats are usually proteins, what else do you know about proteins? So the first thing is that they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and some sulfur. And if you think back several videos, these are the elements that largely make up living organisms. The next thing to note is that they are very important in the structure and function of a cell. They have such diverse roles in a cell that they are almost involved in everything. This monomer of proteins is amino acids. So this amino acid, they all have a similar structure. They have this central carbon that's attached to an amino group and a carboxyl group and the hydrogen. Then this R is usually what differs between the 20 amino acids and gives it its characteristics, which could be polar, nonpolar, or charged, positively or negatively, or neutral charge. And so here they are. And so if you see here in color is the R chain. So these nonpolar molecules, and then these polar molecules, and then these negatively charged, or these positively charged, okay? And what's in color is the R chain. The basic structure of them, though, is all the same. They have the similar backbone, 20 amino acids. Proteins have 4 different structures they can take on. So this primary structure is going to be the chain of amino acids, okay? And so you'll see this makes up, well, you see your R's here. So you can see the different amino acids that have been combined. The secondary structure are these alpha helices or beta sheets. And so this is formed by hydrogen bonds within our primary structure. The tertiary structure is a 3D structure. And so this tends to be formed by other bonds. So this can be some ionic, covalent, van der Waals, hydrogen bonds, different things that are formed to give a 3D structure to our protein. And then the fourth one is this quaternary structure. All proteins don't have a quaternary structure. The quaternary structure is formed when you put several, well, let's say polypeptides together, okay? So let me back up and define a polypeptide. So you have these amino acid chains, and when you join them together in this primary structure, you get this polypeptide chain. It's a chain that are amino acids joined by these peptide bonds. The difference between a polypeptide and a protein usually is structure versus function. Polypeptide defines the structure. Protein is usually a functional unit, okay? So after it's been processed, it becomes a protein when it functions. So now, speaking of those functions, remember they are this diverse group. So they are involved in everything. So they help us make proteins by this gene expression. They form motor proteins so we can move things around. There are defense, metabolism, signaling, structures, and transporters. So many diverse functions. So let's talk about each one. So they can be involved in expression and regulation. So when we get to the genetics chapter and we talk about transcription and translation, we're going to talk about proteins that are doing that. So one here is these polymerases. That's also a very large group. We have RNA and DNA polymerases, and within them there's several different 1, 2, and 3 or alpha, beta of polymerases. In movement, we have proteins that are able to carry stuff. So we can move organelles around in our cell using these proteins. They're usually dynein and myosin. Then we have defense molecules. So when you think about the immune system and antibodies, this is the typical shape of those immunoglobulins, and they're proteins, okay? And they're going to help us identify something that don't belong and fight against it to protect your body. We have metabolism. So a lot of the enzymes, their job are to go in and break those things down. They are proteins with catalytic functions. We have signaling molecules. So in this regard, they serve as the receptor. And then here, this insulin is a hormone in this case, but it also could be small proteins. And then we have some structural. So collagen and keratin are proteins. And then we have our channel, which spans the membrane, or our carrier molecules that are able to carry things around, all made of proteins. Okay, so our proteins are all made of these amino acids, so that's what they have in common. But the job that they do is usually what they don't have in common, because it can be so different, from moving things around to signaling or to causing a catalytic reaction. So at the end of this, you should be able to tell me those four structures that we talked about. Okay? You should be able to tell me what type of bond holds amino acids together. You should be able to tell me what the building block is of proteins.